Want to know what the fast track is in being able to have better relationships, understanding yourself more, attracting high quality clients, being able to be a better service provider to those clients and everyone around you? It's by deeply getting to know yourself on a cellular level, on a psychological level, on a subconscious and conscious level. And that is why I love all these different tools where we can learn what type we are, what category we fall into. That's where my childhood money imprint theory came from 5 years of studying people. If you haven't listened to that 4-part series, you need to go binge that after this. And I honestly had mixed feelings about human design prior to this. I know so many people are obsessed. I get it now, but I had been typed incorrectly. It didn't feel good to me. I didn't understand how to apply it because just knowing what we are, that's nice. That can even be validating, but we have to know how to apply it and what to do with it in order for us to have a transformation and see the abundance and the gifts in it. So I had my publicist search high and low for the top expert, someone who would be a great fit for this podcast for all of us crazy brained, somewhat skeptical people who need to have it served straight. And we found Erin Claire Jones. She is a leading human design expert. She's been featured in major publications all over the world. And she typed me in this episode. So you're going to hear that. I used myself, as I often do, as an example to help all of you go deeper within yourselves. But your mind will be blown in the unique and practical and digestible way. She teaches how to apply your human design type to create a life that feels freeing instead of freaking draining. I'm now on board with this thing. I get it. So sink into it. Even if you don't know your type, we have a resource for you that's right in the show notes so that you can do that. And then you can come back to this episode. Many of you I know already do know where you fall in the types, and we go through each one, but not in a basic level. We go to the nuances and the practical application so you can see results from having this information. I get shooketh in this episode, and you'll see why. If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to Project Me with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash making advice. Now let's get to it. Trust that you're hearing this today for a reason right now. I know that you have been sitting there chewing in your mind. Why am I not further ahead in my business? How can I figure it out? How can I leave this thing to do this thing? I want to do more of this. Why isn't it growing faster? What am I missing here? What do I need to do next? Figuring it out is not a profitable business plan. You can stay stuck in that insane place for years and waste time, money, and energy that you'll never be able to get back. Truth is, you're either setting yourself up to bring in next level profits into your business or setting yourself up for more of the same. It's time to make a move, and this is your money move. Period. End of story. Hands down, working with Tiffany has been my best business investment ever, and I've participated in dozens of people, programs, and events over the years. The results I continue to get are remarkable and sustainable. Allison Lindstrom, online coach. Okay. So the first 11 people get $1,000 off. There's only a couple of those spots left. And that's for my once a year 2-day in-person ProjectME mastermind experience. This is where you are getting the exact strategy to be able to sell anything that you want to online to thousands and thousands and thousands of strangers, exactly how to package and execute and explain and present your offers so that people are eager and excited to buy them on repeat round the clock, whether you're actively working or not, where we set up different income streams for your business. And all these puzzle pieces come together over our 2 days together while we are working on that mind of yours, that money mindset, and having it get attuned and adjusted to the abundance that you want to call in. So you're not continually subconsciously self sabotaging it or working against it. We make it fun. We make it easy. We make it supportive. We make money moves together. Go to projectmewithtiffany.com/mastermind. It's also in the show notes. You can swipe up and access it. It's also in the description here on YouTube on Project Me TV. Do not wait on this. It will sell out because I only do this once a year and the results speak for themselves. Let's make 2024 the year you did the damn thing where everything clicked and all that cash started flowing and moving. But it's up to you to make that move for yourself versus staying in more of the same. And I'm here to help you. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? It's your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is the show that is going to help you grow your business, your bank account, that big, beautiful brain of yours, your abundance, your relationships, and everything in between. It has been a long time, like years, before I have even been willing to re-explore human design. And I had my publicist do research for quite a few weeks before we brought on my guest today, Erin Claire Jones, to make sure that this person was highly vetted. I own my part and I didn't do any deep vetting. And which is interesting because with everything else in my business, or when I hire somebody or even a therapist, I do great vetting. I didn't in this case. So I just wanted to disclose my part in it. And I'm not even saying anything about other human design experts, but just like in any specialty that's highly sensitive, where you are talking about someone's traits, their personality, their persona, deep stuff. If you are not with someone who is maybe yet seasoned or qualified to speak on that level, or who has experience in working with someone like myself, who is a trauma survivor, and I know many of you guys are as well, any kind of inner work can go sideways. So I wanted to make sure I was a good steward by you and for myself. And Erin has typed me. And so I am feeling a little vulnerable, not for you to guys to hear my type. It's more so because I know what happened before. But I think it's important to always like use myself as an example so you can see how this is done. And then we're going to go through this whole human design thing in the way that this woman does it so beautifully and simplifies it. I don't know what it is, Erin, but like, why do so many people complicate the fuck out of this human design thing? Like, now you've got numbers, and then there's 5 different types, but there's subtypes, and why do they do that?
I think it's so easy to go down into the rabbit hole of human design, and I love it. I've gone deep into it, obviously, but I think that if you're going to make it accessible to people, you have to simplify it so deeply and so profoundly. And so I think so much of my journey in the human design world has been as a translator. It's like I go into this crazy rabbit hole and I'll listen to all these wild things and then think about how can I actually translate this information to make it simple, accessible, and useful. And I don't know if everyone does that because they might not be interested in reaching a broader audience in that way.
That makes sense. Just like anything when it comes to people who are medical influencers or people who simplify the law, right? Like, and I
Yeah.
know for me, if anything is overly complicated or heady, like I'm out. Like I have enough going
Hmm.
on. I don't need things to be more complicated in my inner world. I've noticed when I asked my audience, what questions they have about human design, their curiosity, how they feel about it, there were a lot of people who had very strong feelings on either side of this, more so than even like astrology.
Interesting. What kind of
Why is
feelings?
this? This
Yeah.
is fascinating to me.
Well, I think, it is a big thing to have a stranger tell you who you are and how you operate. And I think when I first started sharing human design, it actually made me quite nervous, especially because I was working with many businesses where I really didn't want to go into a space and put people in a box that made them feel restricted in any way. So I think that like that can be a lot for people. My experience in sharing human design, and I've now shared it with many tens of thousands of people and many skeptics, is that it tends to feel very familiar to people. It's often not like I'm telling them anything new. It's more that I'm giving them a language for things they've always felt and known, and I'm just a stranger affirming it. And so I've actually found that it tends to not put people in a box once they start hearing it. Obviously, there are exceptions. And I think one thing I shared with you before we started recording is that I think the deeper I've gone in human design, the less dogmatic I've become. I think when I first discovered human design, I was like, this is wild. This is the truth. This has changed my life. And it did change my life. And I think where I've landed is that what matters more to me is whether human design is useful and not whether it's true. And so when I sit with people, I'm never trying to convince them of anything. I'll say your human design chart says this. How does it land? Does it feel useful? Does it feel supportive? Does it not? And so I really encourage anyone engaging with the system and honestly anyone listening to remember that human design is meant to be a very empowering, expansive, and supportive tool. If it is serving as anything but that, it's probably worth putting it aside for now or forever. And also, I think, as with all systems, the way that we share it comes from our lens on the world. And so I've heard many people share human design in a way where they're like, you're this type and it means you can't do this thing, or you're this type and you must partner with this person. And like, I just don't see that in human design at all. Like, I think human design is not meant to tell us what we can or cannot do or who we can or cannot partner with. It just tells us how we can do the thing that we choose best, how we can do the thing that we choose in the way that is most aligned and most sustainable for us.
It's another tool for us to get to know ourselves better and deeper and take what you
Yes.
like and leave the rest. If it doesn't resonate with you right now, then that's okay. Right. Like,
Yeah.
that's
No
fine.
problem.
It's not like
Yeah.
all of a sudden and what I didn't purposely didn't look, even though I know you sent me the document, although my Virgo ass wanted to look. I didn't look. And yeah, I could see how I think of like the Enneagram, or I think of the fact like I identify as a Virgo, I identify as a trauma survivor. Some people identify as having like ADHD or being neurodivergent. And if we clutch that too closely,
Mhm.
I think that's the dangerous part, don't you? Is like
Yes.
now that's part of my identity. Like I am diagnosed with complex PTSD, I have anxiety and depression, but that's not who Tiffany is. That
Mhm.
is something that I have to manage, right? That's a
Mhm.
component. I'm not ignoring it,
Yeah,
but otherwise it can be used just like a lot of things, like as an excuse. Oh, I'm a Manny Jen, therefore I can't do this. And
totally. Yes, I know. I've heard that so often. And my partner's called me out of moments where I've done that, where I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're right. There's like, I can absolutely do that thing. It's just discovering how to do it in a way that works for me. And also, one thing I'll also say about human design is that it's meant to be an experiment. It's not meant to be a thing where I like tell it to you and you're like, this is my truth. I must live it. It's like, okay, I was just given a lot of interesting information about myself. If I actually put these things into practice and start playing with it, what happens? Do I feel better? Am I more successful? Are more opportunities coming my way? Do I feel worse? Do I feel constricted? So I would definitely say treat it all as an experiment. I've heard things on my own design where I'm like, I don't like that. And then I start playing with it and I like really discover how to work with it in a way that feels really good. And so don't take what I say as truth ever. Like just see what actually happens when you use it in your own life.
I love that. There's a saying from my recovery program that's like, wear it like a loose garment, right?
I love it.
And
Hmm.
I love that thought, like a breezy, like linen dress or linen pants where it feels good and it's helpful. And then take what you like and leave the rest. So let's go through the five types. And am I right in saying that? Are there really five types or are there like 27?
There are really five
Oh,
types.
thank God. I was
Although
afraid
it's,
you were going to say there's
yeah, I'm
like
like, let's go through all
92.
60 types. Yeah. I think that some people will say four. I say five just because there's some additional nuance that's offered when we break it out into five. One thing to be aware of if you're new to human design, every person's design is incredibly unique. So while you are going to fit into one of those five types, it does not mean that you and somebody else of a similar type are the same, obviously. It means that, like, the document I sent you, there are like over 400,000 configurations of that document because type is just one piece and then it kind of there's so many other layers. So just so you guys know, this is a really cool piece of the human design chart and it's also just the first piece. So I want to start with you. Had you know your type? Do you remember it from your
I
experience?
think I was typed as a Manny Jen.
Okay, I have used a generator. Let's hope
Okay.
that's right.
You're like, listen,
Should we
I
check your
didn't
birth
resonate.
info?
I didn't resonate with
Okay.
what I was typed with. So
Okay. Okay, well, maybe we'll double check your birth info after. Basically, what it means to be a generator is that you are somebody that brings a lot of energy and life force and vitality and creativity to whatever it is that you do if you feel genuine excitement and satisfaction about what you're doing. So you're somebody who's got a lot of capacity, and the more you really follow what genuinely satisfies you, the more energy you have, and the more you can kind of uplift everyone around you. The more you're saying yes because you think you should or because somebody else asked you to, which is inevitable because you are a very resource person in many ways, the quicker your battery will drain. And so, one of the biggest lessons is to just prioritize your satisfaction on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and know that that is better for everyone around you. When we talk about excuses, I think sometimes generators can be like, okay, like I have to be 100% lit up by everything I do. And that's just not feasible. This is not an excuse to like not take out the garbage or like not do an annoying thing in your business that you must. It's around the fact that you being primarily satisfied will give you more energy to do everything else. Boundaries are a big lesson for these people because, like I said, they're very magnetic and have a lot of capacity. So people can want them to be involved in everything. So, really trusting your gut to know what you actually feel available for. You are somebody who's meant to kind of wake up and like use up your energy throughout the day. You might find that if you don't use it up in satisfying ways, whether it's what you're working on or who you're spending time with, you might drop into bed and feel pretty restless and have a hard time sleeping. So, like, fully expending your energy is what allows you to rest well at night. And as a generator, you are not somebody who's meant to just like chase after and force and initiate opportunities. Rather, you are meant to kind of wait and see what shows up in your world and what naturally sparks your gut before you go after it. So it's basically seeing what you naturally respond to versus what you think you may should be doing. How does that all land or not land with you?
that definitely lands with me. I have been an entrepreneur, which you don't know this, for 16 years. I have two businesses. So, because of just being experienced, right, and
Yeah.
being awake and aware, I know that like 70% of the things that I don't feel like doing are a required part of being a human in life and running a business, right? Like I just adjust my attitude to it.
Mhm.
But like I do notice when I launch things or products, projects, programs, even what companies I invest in now, if I'm not like super lit on it and I try to force it, and sometimes I don't catch it because my
Of
ego
course.
can be very clever. And if I don't catch it, it's a flop. It does not
Yeah.
go well.
Exactly, and it's funny because in your design, and this extends far beyond type, like you've got a really strong gut response, and you've also got this like very powerful active mind, and they're just like totally doing their own dances. And so it's really easy to kind of get overly logical about things, and your mind serves a big purpose and probably makes you really good at what you do, but your gut and that kind of natural instinct you feel around people and places and commitments is definitely what's going to lead you towards the thing you actually have the energy for.
Do you find that there is a great majority of like entrepreneurs or leaders that fall into a generator category or certain professions that fall into a generator category?
Honestly, generators, I feel like there's such a wide range because these are people, I do see a ton of entrepreneurs that are generators, because they just have this like natural capacity to bring ideas to life when they're excited about them. But honestly, like as a generator, if you're like really lit up by like product management or you're really lit up by construction or you're really lit up by whatever, like that's going to be the thing for you. What matters is like what is the thing that like allows you to go really deep and feel so deeply satisfying and enriching to you because these people are very natural doers. And so that can take so many different forms.
What is the, so to speak, like red flags of being a generator that someone, myself and other people that are listening that have been identified in this category or think they might be, need to be aware of? I know you said boundaries is one
Mhm.
of them.
Yeah, I think another piece is that I think a lot of generators I've worked with have seen it as selfish to kind of prioritize their own satisfaction on a day-to-day basis, where they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna like do this for this person, this for this person, and they just kind of end up like getting just giving it all away and having so little energy left to themselves. And they kind of forget that they're actually gonna have more energy to do everything else when their satisfaction is actually a priority. So that's a big thing. I think that a lot of people have a hard time making that transition. Generators are also very gut-based people. Not all of us have that kind of strong visceral gut response, but it's such an integral part to this design. So I also feel like a red flag is just noticing all the moments where you're like, I think I should do this, or maybe I'm going to do this thing because maybe it will take me here. Maybe I'll do this partnership because maybe this thing will happen. When these people are really like, I'm doing this thing because it feels right. I'm doing this thing because I have the energy for it. I'm doing this thing because I'm drawn towards it. And like, what's annoying about that is that your gut only gives you the right next step. It will not tell you what comes after that. It will not tell you what happens with the investment, what happens with that project. And so it requires a pretty immense amount of trust to just choose based on that. And then one other piece that I would say is that because generators have such a capacity for mastery and depth, and they have this very steadfast, committed energy, sometimes if they distribute themselves across too many things too quickly, it can just be hard for them to make it all happen. And so what I've seen be really successful for generators, like I said, I think my husband is one. He does so many things, but I really see he can only do one thing at once because he just immerses himself so fully in it. So it's like,
So it's like
I'm
a
this.
multi-passionate person, but if you're sprinkler systeming all of it, it's only going to
Yeah,
get so saturated.
totally. And it's like you can be an artist and an entrepreneur and a novelist, but also it might look like having a different day where you focus on each of those things, or being an entrepreneur for 3 months and then working on your novel for 3 months. Like you just kind of require this level of immersion that not every other type has. So not forcing yourself to kind of make everything happen at once and ask yourself instead, what do I have the energy for right now?
What I love about this is it also helps give you permission to not have to operate daily, weekly, monthly, structure your days just like someone else is doing. And I
Exactly.
know this is, everyone has this. Anyone who says they don't is full of shit, where we compare, even in a way where it's like healthy. You're admiring someone's success. People compare maybe themselves to you or even to me, and they want to emulate some of those best practices. But if you, what is the best practice for me and how I manage all the content creation or how you manage all of it?
Mm,
I bet you how you do it versus me, I bet you is
mhm.
completely different.
100%.
And neither's wrong. It's
Yeah.
different because, like you're saying, I'm naturally doing it where it works for me because of being a generator.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's honestly my favorite part of human design is again, it's not that like one type can lead or one type can build a business or one type can create social media content consistently. It's that every type can do everything, but they're going to do it in a different way based on what works for them. And I think so often in the business world, I've had so many clients, I'm sure you have too, where they'll like take somebody's course and be like, okay, this thing worked for this person. I'm going to go learn it from them and emulate it. And then they try it only to realize it doesn't work for them because they're not that person and that's not the strategy for them. And so I think that human design helps us know like what is a way of doing things, building a business, parenting, coaching, whatever, that might just feel far more natural to us than something else we've seen.
Right. That doesn't mean that that person's program or protocol or whatever doesn't work. You just need to mold it so it can work better for you. Right. interrupting this incredible interview to make sure you do not miss the event of the year. This is my 2 day in person mastermind experience where you are going to set yourself up to generating lifestyle changing abundance. You're going to change your money story, create life changing legacy cash while helping countless people with your gifts at this event. You are walking away with income generating skills that are going to pay off for you for decades to come. So it's my proven growth strategies and my proprietary money mindset healing techniques where you're going to be able to do this oceanside in an $80 million beach house, hearing the waves crash, the sand beneath your toes in a fun, abundant environment. Because the more fun you have, the more money you make, and you get to learn these things without being in a sterile environment or sitting in some hotel. I want it to be expansive. I want you to be in your creative zone of genius. This is how we make big things happen in a short amount of time. It's time for you to design your business and structure your offers so you can make more and work less. So all of the details are meticulously laid out in the information page. I wrote every single word and I did my best to answer every question in the frequently asked questions for you. And you'll see tons and tons of reviews that are undeniable of what you can expect to have happen at this event and after the event. Go to projectmewithtiffany.com/mastermind event. You can swipe up. The link is in the show notes and it's in the description on YouTube. And it is in my link in bio on Instagram and on TikTok at Project Me with Tiffany. First 11 spots are getting my money move sale and it's $1,000 off. There's also a VIP upgrade available that is mind blowing. And there are only 5 spots for that special VIP upgrade. Don't sleep on this. Last year, it sold out in 6 days. All right. So you need to run, even if you're pausing the episode, to go in here and grab your ticket to the tax deductible business game changing event that will impact every area of your life and bring in massive abundance.
Exactly.
Like, here's an example in the online space, right? What do we watch a majority of people doing? Now the person has a book. Now they have course number 5. Now they've got a podcast. Now they're on YouTube. Now they got like 5,000 things going all the time, or they're always like launching something. They've always got
Mm-hmm.
something new. There's always something in the works. That's not my jam. That does
Mm-hmm.
not work for me. I have a signature program. It's launched once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Once a year, I have my only in person live event, which I think this is going with what you typed me as. I
Mm-hmm.
have one very well known membership, my Project Me Posse Business Coaching membership. I'm not the store that has 300 things. I have zero
Mm-hmm.
desire for it. In fact, if I try to do that, if I should my way to that, I will end up like horizontal or in a fetal
Mm-hmm.
position rocking.
Yeah. It's a great example. And again, I think it's a good example for you of like the need for like mastery and depth, where it's like, I'm not gonna like change my offerings every 3 months. Like I'm gonna do one thing and I'm gonna do it so, so well. And like you and I are different types, but my design has a similar need for kind of, and also again, my husband, who also runs the business with me, is a generator. Like we've offered 3 offerings over the past 7 years. And one offering has always been our signature offering. We've had it since 2019. That's just the core. Like we just, and it evolves and it changes and we keep making it better, but like it's always been that, and so it's very different than I think many other businesses that might need more variety and more change.
Yeah. So when you guys are comparing or you're seeing like this person, I'm behind because this person seems ahead, that's not necessarily the case. They just have a different way of operating that, for whatever reason, scratches their itch or works better with their particular, human design type and their makeup. So, how does a generator operate when it comes to relationships? Like, what are some like key hot points they need to be aware of?
Yeah. Well, in the same way that generators are meant to kind of trust what they naturally respond to in career, it's the same for relationships. So it's like, who do you feel naturally pulled towards? Who do you have that kind of gut instinct around? And then on the other hand, when your body starts closing up or you start feeling contraction or your gut's pushing you away, also trusting that. I think what I've seen in relationships, again, I'm married to a generator, so I see it very close up, is that because generators are so capable, they can kind of get stuck handling so many things in relationships. It's just like everything is piled on them. And like while they can maybe handle it for a certain amount of time, like they're going to obviously eventually break down because it's just not feasible. And so I think as somebody married to a generator, one of my biggest lessons has been as good as he is at handling things, he cannot handle it all. And whatever I can do to take things off his plate and also give him more space to do things that just bring him joy, like being with our daughter, or like going to see the horses or working on his music, whatever it is, like the better for him and the better for us. And so I think that's been a big lesson for me is I rely on him for so much. And I really learned to like, how can I give him more space and pull things off his plate wherever I can? Because I know that it's just too much for one person to handle.
I mean, I really commend you for that because I know how easy it is when you have someone. I'm like, everyone I've worked with in terms of like energy healers or any kind of work, they always say, like, I have more roots than I do branches. I'm very grounded, I'm solid as
Yeah.
fuck. And just like you said about your husband, right? It's like, I can handle a lot and do a lot, and I know that makes so many people feel safe and
Hmm.
supported and secure. But if I am not doing my job and managing it and setting boundaries, because not everyone has someone like you who's very
Hmm.
evolved and aware and truly selfless. Because I mean, most people want a husband that's a generator. I mean, that sounds amazing. I want one. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But then it can flip on you because
Yes.
when a generator, and correct me if I'm wrong, reaches the max point, that shit ain't cute.
No, it's like, and the thing is, one thing to be aware of as a generator is that like the way that you feel about how you're using your energy every day is very impactful in your environment. We all have different ways that we impact our environment. So to make that even more direct, if you're somebody who's like lit up by what you're doing, you're satisfied by how you're using your energy, like your energy is so uplifting and so expansive and so energizing and so bright. If you are frustrated and exhausted and drained and depleted, that energy also pours out of you. It is sluggishness, it is frustration, like it also projects into your environment. And so that's why it's so important for you to take good care of your energy because that's the thing that benefits everyone. So while it might seem selfless, it's not, you know what I mean? Because when he's really in his best state, like I see the positive impact on my daughter, I see it in her home, I see it with myself. And I can't tell you how often I've sat with new parents or parents of multiples, generator moms, especially who are just like, I really want to do this creative project or I really want to do this thing, but like I just feel like so guilty for doing it. I can't do it. And they're so drained and they're so exhausted because they're taking on so much themselves. And the minute they start to create a little bit more space for the things that do excite them on the side, they're like, oh my God, I have so much more energy to parent and to show up for my family. And so it is such an interesting thing to watch because they start to see like the effect that it has on everyone around me when I really prioritize that is pretty huge.
And this is where I talk about how I finally learned to work less and make more. This goes right along with that. By pulling back, resting. I told you I just got back from a very long European, beautiful trip. I made more money while on the trip, not working,
Mhm.
right? Because of that magnetic energy, because I'm taking care of myself, everything becomes easier
Mhm.
because of that. But when we're working against it and don't utilize some of these like tools, like this
Yeah.
beautiful tool you're sharing today, we make it so much harder on ourselves unintentionally.
Hmm. Exactly. We do. And it's so funny because there's another part of your design called profile, but it's so much around like ease and effortlessness and basically being really following what comes easily and naturally to you and the most easeful way of doing things. And it can create some guilt around doing that, but like that's where you will find the most success. And also, like you said, generators specifically, the more satisfied you are on a day-to-day basis, the more magnetic you are. So if it feels like nothing's coming your way, no opportunities, no podcasts, no romantic potential partners, I would actually first look at how are you using your energy every day and do you feel satisfied when you hit the pillow? And if you're
Mm.
not, then I would start that. Like go to a yoga class, go to a salsa class, like spend time with a friend that you enjoy, work on a passion project, create a garden, whatever the thing is for you, and notice what starts to show up in your world when you actually prioritize your own satisfaction.
And it can sound so counterintuitive to do these things, right? It's like, but I need to do more and I have so much to do and I've got to get this done and I'm a mom and I'm this and I'm a boss and I've got all this stuff going on in life. But when you pull back enough, it actually makes everything fall into place much easier. But it does seem counterintuitive to what we've been
Totally.
taught in this world, in this
Exactly.
in this matrix that we're in. So
Yeah.
let's switch over to
The other
another
types.
type. Now, is generator like is it equal of the five parts? Like 20% of people are generators, 20% are Manigen.
So the majority of the population are manifesting generators or generators. So that collectively makes up 70% of the population. A lot. But also, when you hear about it, it starts to make sense because these are the doers, the ones that have so much capacity to make things happen. Of course, we need a lot of those people. Then we'll get to projectors, which are about 20%, manifestors, which are 9, and reflectors, which are 1. Obviously, these are totally approximate. So manifesting generators have a lot of similarities to what we just shared. So if you look up your chart, you see your manifesting generator, you hear those things, a lot of those things apply. The difference here is that you are also a natural doer, somebody who's meant to prioritize your satisfaction, somebody who's meant to have strong boundaries around your energy availability and what you say yes to. But you are somebody who might find that you are quite multi-passionate by nature. In the way that you and I were talking about, like, oh God, it feels good to have like one offering and
Mm.
one thing. These people might not feel that way. These are my clients that are like coaches and podcast hosts and, artists and opening a yoga studio on the side. And like they need a lot of variety and stimulation, and they are ever evolving in their career and lives. And they can actually be made to feel quite scattered by the people around them, where it's like you're doing too much, you're not choosing one path, you're pivoting too quickly, you're giving up. But like that's actually how it's meant to go. They're meant to try things on and let things go, start an offering, pivot 6 months later,
It
you
can look
know.
crazy to someone, just like an extrovert can look crazy to an introvert and vice versa. It can look
Exactly.
crazy.
Totally. And I think one thing I always remind my manifesting generator clients of is like, don't try to make sense, like make your career make sense to other people because it probably won't. They might not get why you're like coding and also modeling and also doing this other thing, but it doesn't matter because like what you feel pulled towards and excited by is reason enough to go pursue that thing. It also might not make sense to the person. They might be drawn to like getting a master's in, I don't know, clinical psychology, but not actually want to practice being a therapist. And like, it's just trusting that what they're feeling pulled towards is guiding them in some direction. Manifesting generators are also very fast. They tend to be able to find the fastest way to make something happen, but they can skip a few steps along the way. So I think another important lesson for manifesting generators, and this kind of goes to your question of like, where can they get taken off track, is to not expect others to move as fast or do as much as them. Because I've had so many manifesting generator clients. I had one in particular who came to me and she's like, Erin, I just went through 7 assistants. Like, what is going on? And I was like, what is going on? Like, why are you letting them go? Why are they not working? She's like, nobody can move as fast. And I was like, totally makes sense. They're not meant to. You actually probably would benefit from somebody who moves slower and can handle the step-by-step pieces so that you can move fast and kind of be in that fast flow. So I think as a manifesting generator, if you're expecting a partner, friend, colleague to move at your speed, they're not meant to. They have their own gifts. I would take the time to discover what those are and trust that efficiency is one of yours.
What would you say are some of the red flags to be aware of? Because most people when I ask the audience, I would say a majority, which goes with the approximate
Yeah.
percentages you gave, did say Manny Gen. I mean,
Yeah.
whether they're typed right or not, I don't know. So, what would you say are some of the things that they really need to be careful of? I feel like I coach a lot of Manny Gens, like where, like you said, they skip steps, then they get upset because they're not making the money or they're not reaching the goal or it's not the plane isn't landing
Hmm.
yet they feel like they're doing all the things and they're in it and I'm not being lazy and I'm doing all the stuff, but because they move so quickly, they innocently bypass some of the key fundamentals that make the connections to make the money, as an example.
Yeah. And I think that goes to, when possible, having the right support around them because some steps are really necessary. So having people that can like handle those steps so they can kind of move fast and be in that beautiful flow. I think where I also see manifesting generators struggle is when they're kind of sticking with things for too long. They're like, oh, I said yes to this thing. I committed to this thing. I've got to stick with this offering. I've got to stick with this thing when the energy is actually just not there for it anymore. And so while they might feel guilty for pivoting or feeling like they're quitting for pivoting, it's not benefiting anyone for them to kind of be a half-hearted yes about what they're committing to. And so I would say really giving yourself permission to keep pivoting and keep changing and trusting each experience is bringing you some value that you'll kind of bring on to the next one. I think similar to generators, manifesting generators are definitely prone to just saying yes to too many things, and especially because they are often so multi-passionate and so excitable and so energized, it can be easy to be like, I've got to do it all right now. And I would definitely take the time to have somebody sit with you as a manifesting generator and ask you, what are you excited about this? Are you excited about this? Is the timing right for this? Is the timing right for this? And just help you know, like, oh, these are the two things I want to pursue right now. And this thing I'm super excited about, but maybe I'll do in a year or 6 months. Because you might be excited about many things, but it doesn't mean the timing is right to pursue them all. And I think also, another red flag is like, again, like I said, it's really trying to kind of make sense of to other people and like niche down. In the same way that you and I like to niche down, manifesting generators will likely feel so confined and constricted if they try to do that. And so, as counterintuitive as it might seem, I would say like follow what feels right in the moment and let that niche keep evolving and don't force yourself to kind of be in a box because it's so unnatural for you to try to fit there comfortably.
What would you say is like the main identifying differentiator between what makes someone a Manny Gen versus a straight up generator?
So generators often kind of have this desire for like mastery, this kind of depth, whereas manifesting generators might move between many different things at once. And then generators might enjoy the step-by-step process of bringing an idea to life, whereas manifesting generators might enjoy the speed and the skipping steps part of bringing a thing to life, which makes these two types really amazing collaborators.
Oh,
You know,
interesting. I thought you were going to say that there is a lot of butting heads that could occur because you have one person who's kind of like slow and steady and another person who's like hippity skippity.
right. Definitely butting heads if they're trying to be the same. If they kind of really realize how different they are and the generator can kind of be in that slow and steadfast, making sure those steps are covered, and the manifesting generator can kind of be in this like wild creative flow where they're bringing new ideas to life, they can be so complementary in a business.
I think
But
what
yeah.
they struggle with so much, at least in what I've heard from my students, is they want to pivot and change, but they also are afraid, like, but am I just jumping ships too early because I'm uncomfortable? That's a very nuanced state. I'm sure you help a lot of people with that.
Yeah, and I think one thing to be aware of is that manifesting generators are also very gut-driven people. And there's nuance to this. Some people are meant to be very fast in their decision making, some people are meant to be slower. But one of the best ways for manifesting generators to access their gut response is to have the people around them ask them specific questions. And so, like, if I was sitting with a manifesting generator going through that challenging moment, should I leave or should I not? They're probably going to talk to me like for 20 minutes about all the reasons they should or should not do that thing. And then I'm going to ask them, is it time to leave? Like, do you actually feel like it's time to leave? And my experience most often is the answer is immediate and visceral. It's like, yes, no. And so, like, there's a lot of other stuff there, of course, but often there's a knowing underneath it all. And so, my work in sitting with people is just to help them get there, and they can have other people in their life get them there. I don't have any special ability. I just know how to listen to whether it's their gut leading or not, but their partner could do the same. So could their friends. So could you.
If you guys want to go deeper into learning your type, I know that you offer a couple
Hmm.
tools, and we'll have them in the show notes, but I would rather you explain what we're
Yeah.
putting in the show notes so they have the option of what level of depth that you want to go into on this thing.
Yeah, just a little bit of context. And I think that this actually goes back to your question earlier, like, why do people go into all the details? I think part of the reason is that people don't understand that most people don't want to learn human design.
Mm.
Most people want to know how human design can be useful in their own life. They don't care about all the centers and the channels and the colors and what they mean. They just want to know, how can it help me? And so our offering, our signature offering that we've sold over 40,000 of and we've had since 2019 is something called the Blueprint Guide, which is basically a book all about your unique design. It's totally customized to you. Like I said, there are over 400,000 variations. It extends far beyond type, but it basically is, what does your chart say about how you can kind of use it in your life? Like, what does it mean for career and relationships? Where can you get taken off track? What are your strengths? So, if you want a book and an operating manual to you, it really is the perfect place. And we have a discount code for that, which is Project Me. But that can be found at humandesignblueprint.com/guide.
And it's in the description here on YouTube at Project Me TV. And it's also just swipe up and it's in the show notes for you guys to access. Okay, so let's go on to another type, the
Okay.
less popular of types, so to speak.
Okay, so yeah, we're going down to the ones that are a bit more rare. So we've got projectors. I'm a projector. Projectors are kind of the opposite of what I've been sharing. Projectors are not meant to be consistent doers, so projectors are often very gifted leaders and coaches and managers and guides because they are so sensitive to and attuned to people and so good at asking the right questions. And as projectors, our biggest red flag here is that like we basically are very susceptible to overdoing and overworking to try to keep up with everyone around us. And so one of our biggest lessons is knowing that our energy actually ebbs and flows. And it's really good to have like moments of pause and rest and space in your day and not just keep going just to keep going. I know for me, the more rested I am, the more effective I am. And I'm learning this lesson every single day, and I still don't quite believe it. But I would say as a projector, it's really trusting that your worth does not come from how hard you work or how much you do. It's really your perspective and how you see.
That must be
Uh,
challenging, though, for a projector when we're in this world where everything is so visible on social
yeah,
media and where if especially if you're in North America, where it's like the human doing versus the human being.
yeah.
And if a projector is someone who more so operates in the less is more, I can
Mhm.
imagine that can be very triggering sometimes, especially if you're surrounded by or watching a lot of Manny Gens or Gens.
Oh, yeah, totally. And again, it just goes back to the same thing. Like when we try to be a thing that we're not, it's really hard, and I've spent so much of my life trying so hard to be a doer. And I just have learned through experimentation and experience that like I'm just not at my best. The opportunities don't come when I try to do that. Like my work is not as good. And so again, just like building these little moments of pause and giving myself space to just be intentionally unproductive has just been like so impactful in my life. And generators and manifesting generators, they often know when to stop. Like their energy's out. They're like, I'm done. I've literally used it all up. It's like time to rest and sleep. As projectors, we don't quite have an off switch. And so like I've had so many moments where my husband's like, why are you still working? And I'm like, it's a great question. I don't know why. Like I'm gonna go ahead and close my computer.
Meaning you don't get as visceral of signs as I do. Like
Yeah.
when my battery is like running low, it's loud.
Totally. No, at all. And like there is this kind of constant, I should do more, like I should whatever, like productivity is going to equal more success. And it just has not been the case for me that that's actually been true. And one other piece that's important for projectors to know, and this felt very disempowering for me to learn at first, and now I'm in love with it, is that projectors are also not meant to initiate or chase after things. They're meant to be invited into opportunities. And so they're meant to wait for somebody to kind of look at them and be like, hey, I think you'd be amazing at this. You carry all these unique gifts. Like, and in the same way that I was invited onto this podcast, it was just like my only work has been to just make myself visible and share my work with the world. When I pitch people, it doesn't go so well. But when I just like let myself be broadly seen and just share, then it allows people to be like, oh, I really resonate with her. I'm going to reach out. And so all the opportunities in my life have come from invitations like that. And it's even funny. I'm working on a book right now that's due in a month. And like I went through the traditional publishing process, but my agent who I worked with is the one who reached out to me, not the one I thought I wanted to work with. The woman who eventually bought the book reached out to me and then was the one who like it's just like so many things in my life. That's how it happens.
And your
And so
battle is trusting that.
sing it. It's so hard to
And the
trust
more you
that.
start forcing, pushing, pining, doing, the more you're repelling basically your manifestations.
Exactly. And it's also hard as a projector on a day-to-day level because projectors are super perceptive. And so they basically see so much where it's like, oh my God, I see how this person could like do this differently, or I could see how this could be done better. But like if we share all these insights without an invitation, people are often very resistant to them. And then we start to feel bitter and resentful. And so even on a day-to-day basis, I really learned to like sit back and wait for somebody to be like, Erin, like I want to hear your perspective. What do you see? And obviously with people that I love, I might be like, oh, I have a thing I want to share. Like, are you open to hearing it? But I remember even growing up, like I really would try to guide and lead my sister so much. And she was just like not open to it. Her design is about not being told what to do. And so I think learning that, we haven't got over that one yet, but learning that was so helpful because I was like, it's not that the advice is wrong. It's more that like this is just not the right dynamic to share. So waiting to be invited in has really helped me conserve my energy and make sure that I'm only sharing my guidance and insight with those who are ready to receive it when they're ready to receive it.
What is the challenge with a projector in relationships? Because I could see, since you said your dynamic with your husband is a generator, I could see that as me being a generator myself, now that I know, and I could see myself if I was not taking care of myself and I was doing all the things, I would get resentful of a projector that I didn't feel like was doing enough.
100%. And that's been a thing, and I think a big thing for him has been like, 50-50 is not always 50-50. It's not like we're contributing the exact same thing in the exact same way, but it's been more discovery of like, how can we each contribute in a way that really is sustainable and feels good for us? So yeah, and especially like right now, it's like I'm pregnant, I'm doing all this. It's just like I need a lot of rest and a lot of space. And so like he's really learned that about me. And like he does his very, very best to honor that. And we also have a business together. We work together basically our whole relationship.
God bless you. I have zero desire to do this.
I don't know whether I'd recommend it. We love doing everything together and it's required so much understanding of how different we are. But I think you articulated the challenge pretty excellently and that like it's really easy to be frustrated. I've worked with so many clients that are like, God, they're resting, they're not doing anything, whatever it is, and then realizing that it's like, oh, like they really need that space and they come back from that space so refreshed.
And
And they
it's
also
not
bring
like you're resting, like, oh, I'm just, entitled and I'm sitting back.
no,
It's actually, it's actually how you are productive,
it is. And like
which
again,
sounds weird, but I get it.
but yeah, but it's like the thing is that like if I'm trying to do things when I don't have the energy is diminishing returns. You know what I mean? But when I wait till the energy's actually there, I can make it happen so powerfully and at my best. And so like, and he also knows that when I take rest, like I'm way better for our business. I'm way better as a mother. I'm a way better partner. And one example is like he decided to just like redo all this landscaping DIY this weekend and like, very physical manual labor. And like, well, there's a past version of me that would be like, I'm gonna get in there with him and I'm gonna do it, even though I'm like 7 months pregnant. I was like, I'm gonna lie on the porch swing and I'm gonna just be with him, and I'm gonna bring him water and I'm just gonna like be part of the process, but not feel the need to exert myself in the same way because I truly don't have the energy right now. And so it's like learning in moments like that, or like how can we still be together and support each other, but maybe not showing up in the exact same way.
How do you handle it as a projector when you're a month away from your book deadline, which
Yeah,
that's stressful, you
a
know?
little bit. Yeah,
How and you have to get the pages in. Period, end of story. And if it's like you're not in that space, but
yeah,
you have a deadline, and there's got to be that fine line of you pushing
yeah.
versus you just going, I'm resting and I'm just going to tell my editor that I'm a projector.
Yeah, that hasn't worked. I think that, yeah, I mean, there are moments for me where it's like I'm in a really hard deadline right now. And also, again, I'm pregnant, so I can't actually push the deadline much. It's like this is the day that it's
Yeah.
due. And I also really want space to not work before the baby comes. Um, so I think for me, it has been just giving myself moments of pause where I can. You know what I mean? Where it's like I'm working a lot right now and I'm waking up before the family wakes up and I'm just like, and I also am like, okay, like today it's like I'm also gonna go to yoga. I'm also gonna have acupuncture. Like I'm just gonna have these like little moments just to kind of recharge in the middle of the day. I'm gonna like make sure I go for a walk. Like I think there's a past version of me that would like put those things to the side because it's like, no, those are work hours. And I'm like, I will be so much more effective if I take care of myself in those moments. And like I also like get in bed at 8:30 p.m. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's like I have a hard boundary and I read fiction for an hour because that is like a moment that I need so desperately. And so I would say that in this moment of my life, I'm working my booty off and I also like I'm just giving myself moments of pause where I can. And also like I went down to a 4-day work week during the book, which feels like a little bit crazy. It feels like maybe I should work more, but like I also know that time with my daughter is like my favorite thing
But
ever.
we already have a book of evidence, I mean,
Yeah,
pun intended, that you
totally.
working less generates more.
It does. And honestly, like I will say that even on the weekends where it's like, okay, I'm gonna be with her all day, like, and I'm just gonna like really do, I'm gonna do such crazy work during her nap. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have like an hour and a power and an hour and a half and then like be with her again. And so like I'm just finding like how can I just not force myself to work all the time and just create those moments where I'm forced to be a lot more effective. And I find that I am more effective in those moments. When I just create so much time to fill to keep working, I'm not that effective.
I love this. It's like we are so conditioned to work against ourselves. That's what just
Oh,
keeps coming up
I
the
know.
more you're sharing this. So now there's two more types, and these are the ones that are by far the most rare, right?
Correct. So manifestors are very disruptive, innovative forces. These are people that are a little bit more provocative in their energy. These are ones that I can often feel the most when they walk into a room. They're so good at starting things. They have so much energy to like bring new ideas to life and like walk new paths and do things differently than the way that anyone else has done. But they're not great or might not have the energy to sustain or keep creating or building that thing.
I know I've dated a lot of these
A lot
people.
of these people, so really good at starting, but you can imagine how wrong they make themselves for that. I've worked with so many manifestor entrepreneurs that like are staying in a business far too long because they think they should bring the thing to life that they started, but their juice and power was at the beginning. Their energy can really ebb and flow like projectors, but a little bit different in that it's not day to day. Like they might have a few hours, weeks, or months where they're totally on fire, and then a few hours, weeks, or months where they'll kind of pull back and they're in their solitude and they're resting and they're waiting for the next idea to emerge. They are the ones that are really meant to initiate. So they don't need anything to respond to or an invitation. They're just waiting for an idea to bubble up and then they're just here to go make that thing
But
happen.
they don't like the actual like day-to-day execution of it as much.
Not when it gets past the beginning stages. Like
Yeah,
at the beginning,
and
they
this
might
can
love that.
be people can really judge these people. And I have in my
Correct.
personal life because it looks like someone who's starting all of these projects and never finishes them. And it
Correct.
can feel really infuriating.
Exactly. But it's like, but they're in their gift then. You know what I mean? As long as they know how to then delegate and bring on support and know that like when they free up their energy for their next thing to initiate, they're actually at their best. But yes, if you're expecting them to kind of sustain their energy and always be available, it will be very disappointing because that's not how they operate. And these are people where freedom is a core value.
So
You know,
they're
they
like a
often,
visionary. They
yes.
they have a great idea, they have an invention, but they don't want to get into the weeds of getting the patents and the testing and the marketing and all the stuff.
Yeah, like they want to like bring the thing to life and like do all that's required to make that happen, and then probably have somebody else be the one to kind of sustain and create that thing. And it might not be creating something new, it might be disrupting the way that something's always been done. Like I find that a lot of these people can struggle in a corporate environment when people don't appreciate their innovative nature. Because I've had so many manifestor clients that come in, they're like, okay, we could do this all way better. And if the like boss or CEO is not open to that and resist it, it obviously won't feel great. But if they are in a really innovative, disruptive role that makes them feel free and autonomous, they can thrive in any environment.
Are there any public figures, like whether you actually know them or not, that you would say this person is likely a manifester? Because you said their energy is so potent, you can usually feel it.
Yeah. Adele is a manifester. Frida Kahlo is a manifester. Gloria Steinem.
Okay. So a
Yeah,
lot of manifestors, would it be fair to say they're provocative thought leaders, like they make people
totally.
think differently
Yeah,
and
that's
get a
their
lot of
gift.
backlash for it as well.
Correct. It can be a little bit polarizing, but they're here to like really just like do things their own way. And their energy is very intense and that it either kind of like inspires people and impacts them so greatly, or it kind of pushes people away.
I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure the my Virgo-ness plays in here as well. I would, if I were to say the most triggering, at least where we're at so far, I know we still have another type, it would be the manifester type in my personal and professional life. As
Yeah.
someone who I was a former CEO of a very large company,
Hmm.
and those manifestors who would come in and it would be in a meeting, and likely, they weren't maybe practiced or aware of how to best communicate their ideas. They'd like plop it on a table, and you're like, well, that's going to cost $25 million. So that's not really helpful here,
Hmm.
like, And are you going to pay to do the work and da 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 da, or it's that guy I've dated where it's like, well, you should do this in your business and you should do that in your business and you should get this redone in the house. And you're like, so are you going to fucking do it for me? Like it definitely
Totally.
triggers me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reminder of why it's so important to kind of understand the people around us and how to honor them. Because if a manifestor is in a position where that disruptive, innovative nature is why they're there, then you're like, give me the ideas. Like I can't wait to hear them. But if like that's not why they're there and they're expected to do something else, it's just going to be probably not what you want.
Yeah, I could see how that's really useful in a work environment, in a personal environment, to not take it things so personally, and for yourself to know what you are and take responsibility for how you operate and communicate as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've had so many clients be like, can you just send my blueprint to my boss? Just like have them read it, like help them know how to work with me. And I have such a particular love for manifestors because my sister's a manifestor and so is my mom. So I just like grew up.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of grew up in that energy. And yeah, it's just been really interesting to see and to know how to honor them because again, like I try to tell my mom what to do. Still, I'm like, oh, you should do that thing. And like you can just see like, like don't tell me what to do because manifestors are not here to be guided or told what to do. They need to feel free to do things on their own terms and in their own way. And I will say the last piece about manifestors is like they're here to initiate new ideas, but they're also here to inform and keep people in the loop of what they're choosing and when. And that can be really annoying for them. But like basically their energy is very impactful. So if they go off and disappear and don't inform you, you can be like, what is going on? What happened? But if there's just like a simple like, I need a little space to myself, or like I've decided to do this thing, like it just kind of puts people at ease and makes them kind of be let into their process a bit more. And so I want to say that for the manifestors, it's probably very unnatural for you to keep people in the loop because you want to go off and do your own thing. And yet it is meant to bring so much more ease into your relationships, businesses, all of it.
Ooh, that's a beautiful piece of advice because, like we keep saying, some of the things we're talking about, in fact, most of them will seem counterintuitive,
Yes,
but doing the counterintuitive, doing the contrary action here is actually what's going to get you more of what you want.
exactly.
What
And
is
that's
the
the piece that's the least natural. That's like of all human design
like if you
types and
the
charts.
I
Yeah.
could totally see that because it
Yeah.
can feel like, well, I have to check in with someone. Like I don't want to check in. I
Totally.
don't want to feel controlled. Like I don't want.
Yeah.
I absolutely could see and have empathy on that
Yes.
other side. I had to learn empathy for like extroverts as someone who's an
Yeah.
introvert, right? And I feel my work and talking to you, and I'm so appreciative for your wisdom and how you're explaining it because I can see the work I need to do is
Yeah.
find more empathy and compassion by learning these different types because I already feel it now.
Totally. I know.
I can see the struggle in some of like in each of these types like okay, that probably does feel hard.
Yeah. And I will say that human design's obviously so useful on an individual level to be like, how are we meant to do things in the way that works for us? But I would say it's almost even more potent on a relational level because you start to realize all the areas in which you expected others to be just like you. And you start to be like, oh, they're wired differently. Let me take the time to understand how they work and what they need. And it really transforms relationships and brings us so much closer together when we understand how different we are.
So what is this final one? This is the one that's like 5%.
1%.
Oh my
I
gosh.
know.
So
And it feels
this is our these are little unicorn people.
they're unicorn people. These are people, they're called reflectors, and they are people that are very sensitive to their physical space and they're always kind of taking in and magnifying the energy that they're around. And so, in some ways, they're reflectors because they're mirrors for where they are, for teams, for communities, for society. So, how reflectors are showing up is often a reflection of the quality of that space. If they're in a team and they're feeling super energized and super excited, that probably is the energy of that team. So we call reflectors evaluators in the context of business because they just see and sense and feel things that most people don't. And so they often thrive in positions where they can kind of like share their perspective on what's not working, what is working, and how things can kind of progress forward in a better way. Like I said, they're very sensitive to space. So I would encourage these people to be quite ruthless about where they spend time, making sure their city feels good, their home feels good, their office feels good. If they go into a restaurant, the vibe is right, the table is right. Like being in the right space informs their experience. Another core part of being a reflector is that they are not just one thing. They will likely have days where they feel like generators or manifesting generators or projectors or manifestors. And their job is not to try to be one thing or show up in a consistent way, but honor whatever feels like them that day, knowing it's all them.
What
They are,
what
go
is
ahead.
a like telltale sign for you or a big indicator that someone could be this 1% reflector?
I never know because it depends on how they're showing up that day. One of my best friends is a reflector. And I remember like once I was like, oh my gosh, she's so a manifesting generator. This is like such a buzzy, excited energy. And then like the next day she was so different. And I was like, oh, like she's a reflector. Like she's just has she's here to express herself in so many different ways. So I would say that's probably the type that is the hardest for me to pinpoint because there's such a variety of the way that they show up because they're just meant to express themselves in so many ways. I think one thing, if I was to get in conversation with them, if they felt different than other people in a really profound way, like because they often just operate by a different set of rules, that might be a clue. There are also people that are meant to be really slow in their decision making. So if I kind of heard them discuss that, that would also be a clue. But yeah, they're the hardest ones for me to just guess.
What is the biggest challenge about being in, whether it's a friendship or a relationship with a reflector?
Well, their energy is going to keep ebbing and flowing. So you might, expect them to be available for something because they were yesterday, but they might not be today. And so it requires you as a friend, partner, family member to just keep checking in and see what they're available for. Also to know that they're sensitive to space. So you might be like, I love this restaurant, I love this hotel, but like it doesn't feel right for them. And it's going to be hard to have the right experience together if it's not right for them.
And my
So
guess
also,
is they're not great at like faking this.
I mean, they maybe are very conditioned and have learned how to, but probably not. In an ideal world, no, they're not good at faking it. They walk in and they're like, the vibe just doesn't feel right.
And I could see how that can feel, especially to people who crave consistency. Maybe they grew up in a dysfunctional household or a trauma survivor, and I think a lot of us as humans, we like kind of knowing everyone has
Yeah.
different moods, but we at least like knowing patterns in people and what
Yeah.
sets them off and what changes. And it sounds like a reflector is very hard to kind of determine that. And that
Mm-hmm.
could feel very stressful, at least for someone like me. That
Yeah.
could feel very stressful to like be able to put my finger on it.
Yeah. And I would say that they are most supported in relationship when they have space to keep evolving and keep becoming, and they're not expected to stay the same. So it kind of requires a partner or friend who just wants to keep meeting all these new versions and is excited to. It doesn't mean there aren't going to be threads of consistency. Of course, there's going to be core values and things like that. But like you might find like, wow, you show up so differently with your family and then with your friends and then with this group of friends because they just are magnifying all this amazing energy that they're around.
Yeah, and I could definitely appreciate that as a friend. I don't know if I would want that as an employee or as a romantic partner. And I think that's
Yeah.
also important to utilize this to determine what actually fits the best with you and your type,
Yeah.
wouldn't you
Yeah.
say?
Totally. But I really do have a belief that, I think that like any type can be with any type, any design can be with any design as long as those differences are honored. So you might be like, okay, this is like not for me, but I think that it totally is possible if that's like an energy that you want. Like I would say a reflector in a business, they can like be in the business and just basically take this bigger view and give you so much perspective on what's happening in a way that's so valuable. So maybe that operates better as like a kind of consulting role than a role that you're relying on day to day.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's so many other components to somebody, right?
Correct.
Someone's unrealized trauma, someone has a mental illness, right? Like someone is using an illegal substance. Like there's so many other factors that go into play that none of these things that you were sharing today are an absolute. It's like when you look at astrology, it's like Virgos shouldn't be with this sign and Virgos are really good with this sign. But it's like I have also experienced the exact opposite too.
Exactly. So anything's possible. I think it just requires that awareness of how different they are and like whether or not that's suited, you know, for what you're looking for.
What would you say is the best next move for somebody who's like, I like the simplicity of this. I want to dig in more. Is it jumping into your signature program or is there another like toe dippy step prior to that if that feels like a little bit like too much for them right now?
I think the first piece I would say is just look up your design, totally free. Go to humandesignblueprint.com and look up your chart and see what your type is because we've gone through each of them. And I think first be like, how does that feel to me? Like, does that feel useful? Does that feel interesting given what I heard about the type that I am? And maybe look up the type of a partner or a child or a friend and also see like, does that feel useful to understand them in that way? If you're like, okay, I really do want to learn more about myself and how I can actually use it, then I think getting the blueprint guide is the perfect next step as a way to just be like, how can I actually use this in my life? But I would start, we've given people so much information that I think they can first just get a sense of like whether it feels useful and resonant for them.
And you guys, you're getting 10% off so generously by using the code ProjectME. That's right here inside the show notes when you swipe up and here in the description on YouTube at ProjectME TV. Thank you so much for right sizing my
Oh,
experience with
that makes
human
my day.
design. I mean, like you said, I have a very strong gut. So,
Yeah.
as does my publicist. So, I already trusted
Mm,
her. But then she sent me three people in full disclosure, and it was immediate no, no, immediate yes.
mm,
And so I already know to trust my gut, but it feels really, really good. And I genuinely want to thank you because this is really useful for me. Like now it's a tool I get to use versus a tool
yeah.
I was kind of like, no, I'm not going to do
Yes.
it.
Which totally makes sense. If you had a bad experience, it's like hard to want to keep going back. But I'm just so grateful that you're open to it. And I'm so grateful to talk to you because I also think that a lot of people I talk to, I love when people are skeptical in that way and also kind of have that because I think most people are. And so I think being able to kind of talk through that with you has been so wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited for your book. So you guys be on the
Me
lookout.
too.
And your baby, you have
Me
like,
too.
I mean, who the hell births a book and a baby at the same time?
Honestly, it was my whole vision. I was like, I want to get pregnant while I'm writing the book. And now that I'm here, I'm like,
Interesting.
that was a lot. So, anyways, I don't know if I would recommend, but it's been a real experience birthing all the things at once.
Well, we're excited to see it and support you. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
sharing all of your gifts.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.